Mwandazimu. This is actually a Swahili word for sufferers of mental illness in Kenya. Can you imagine? We actually calling them totally out of it. It's so dismissive. It's so derogatory. It's demeaning and it's antagonistic. Actually, it's cruel. You know, if somebody had a broken hand or was affected by cancer or maybe even malaria, you wouldn't think of giving them such a derogatory name. Mwandazimu. I wonder how we even arrived at that. How do we do that? How do we actually call a fellow human being Mwandazimu? Something is just not right. You know, I remember there was one time I was driving home. And as I was driving, I saw this old family friend. We'd pretty much grown up together with him. He was looking unkempt and just picking through bins. There was a nearby school. I looked and then I looked again. I thought, no, it can't be. Can it be the same person? He was, you know, he was all dirty. I was so shaken. Yeah, I pulled over to say hello. And he looked at me. Actually, he was surprised that I was even talking to him. He looked at me and suddenly he turned away and went off, carried on doing what he was doing. I didn't know how to take it because he had been such a good family friend. We'd all known each other. We'd climbed trees together and rode bikes together. And he had been a gentle soul, really gentle and caring. I just felt this sadness come over me. And I kept on asking myself, how can it be? If somebody had actually given me a vision of down the line, this was what was going to happen, I would have said, you got to be kidding, not him, not him. It can't be. It can't be. But then, you know, this friend of ours is just one of the ones who hung around on the streets, picking through bins. But there are those ones who are actually locked away in people's homes. There are those who, if you've got the money, you make it into a rehab and you're hidden away there so that people don't know that you're actually suffering from a mental illness. It really brought it home to me. You know, I kept on thinking about it for the next 1 month. I just kept on thinking about this particular person and thinking, I wonder what his life is like. It was just so sad. There are so many who are locked away. And these are the people we call Mwandazimus because of their mental illness. There are so many people who are affected by mental illness, but they're actually afraid of coming out. And I'm not surprised that they don't come out, you know, because what do? We end up abusing them. And if it was happening to me, you know, I'm sure I would do the same thing. They live in denial and actually just sort of hide away because of the stigma, because of the abuse that we're actually putting them through. And that is just not okay. And how do we respond to the sufferers? Have you ever thought, whenever you see somebody who is looking like they have got a mental illness, what do you do? What do you do? How do you actually respond to them? For a lot of people, from what I have seen, there is alarm. It's like this person is going to hurt you. There is fear. I don't understand why. Why is there fear? There is shame. It's like we feel ashamed. And then there is the animosity. And it's the animosity that drives us to start calling people wendazimu. And then for a lot of people as well, we actually end up believing old myths and taboos about mental illness. And when you stand back and look, you ask yourself, really? I've had situations where, people have said things like, that one was passed down from the ancestors. That mental illness, it was thrown on them. And that is absolutely no excuse to actually abuse people who are suffering from mental illness. It is, bottom line, cruel behavior. You have a think about it. What is your reaction most of the time? Do you go into those places? Does your mind take you into places of, oh my goodness, that person, they have been cursed. So our whole attitude on mental illnesses is just so archaic. The taboos that we tie on mental illnesses is so archaic. It's like, when are we actually going to get into the 21st century and stop this primitive behavior that actually causes more deaths because people suffering from mental illnesses will not come out and get the treatment because they're just so afraid of the way the community actually reacts to them. So how do we treat sufferers? Most of the time, we ostracize them. We don't want to be near them. I mean, let's face it. That's why you see so many people who have got mental illnesses, those who can't afford rehab centers and those who are not shut in the homes like I'd mentioned. They're actually on their own. You never find that they're actually with other people. The ones that are walking around on the roads and everything, you don't find them with other people at all. I wonder why. It's because we've actually said, you know what, go away. The same thing with my friend. He was on his own because, we have said you do not fit in. We dismiss them and we ridicule them. And really, what we're saying is that you no longer belong to this community. You no longer belong to this family. You no longer belong to the human, to humanity. What are we going to do about it? One day, it's that person. This thing could happen to anyone, absolutely anyone. I'd just like you to take a look at Robin Hammond's work, who has done. His focus has been doing photography on mental illnesses in Africa. There are some scenes that you might not want to watch because it's really horrible, it's really cruel. So if you do not want to look at what he has taken the reality of mental illness in Africa, please turn away now because they're pretty gruesome. So just have a look and see how we treat, people who are suffering from mental illness.
Over the course of 2 years, in 9 different African countries, I sought them out. The forgotten, the ignored, the neglected, the abused. I found them crouching in the dark corners of church basements, chained to beds in crumbling hospitals, tethered to sticks in dust-blown tent cities, locked away behind the rusted bars of prisons. The worst was the children, wide-eyed with fear, faces aged from never having known the touch of love. To be mentally disabled in many parts of our world is to be subhuman. To be mentally ill in a country in war, in a failed state, in a nation racked by corruption, in a refugee camp, is to be condemned. The first time I met a group of people with mental disability was in a prison in South Sudan. The experience changed me and started me on a path to document the lives of the mentally disabled living in African countries in crisis. I travelled through the continent meeting people with mental illness caused by horrors experienced and those with mental disability from birth. In the ruins of cities destroyed and institutions where the infrastructure of care has collapsed, I documented the catastrophe life is for these people. Through Africa's war zones and refugee camps, I discovered an entire section of communities abandoned by governments, forgotten by the aid community, neglected and abused by entire societies, a voiceless minority condemned to lives of quiet misery. The forgotten, the ignored, the neglected, the abused. Once I was shackled. For the first time, I realized how much I valued the freedom I had taken for granted all my life. Many of the people I photographed in this work have never known that sense of liberty. In the societies and institutions in which they live, their mental disabilities have condemned them to lives in chains. The restraints are not always physical. Discrimination, neglect, and the failure or absence of policies to assist those with mental disability can be just as harmful. Suffering can be endured where hope exists. I knew I would be released from my shackles, that eventually my liberty would be returned. Alas, for the many people I met with mental disability, there is little hope. I have been staggered by the dearth of people willing to help. Politicians, heads of psychiatric institutions, charity workers, religious leaders. Their willingness to assist only extends to voters, those groups attractive to funders, or those who by helping them will boost their reputation. When it comes to caring for the mentally disabled, it is always someone else's job. And so, the chains remain, and they continue to be the forgotten, the ignored, the neglected, the abused. And that is the saddest part of making this work. If you go to the places where I met the people whose lives I documented, they will still be there. The same rope knotted around their ankle, the same nightmares waking them at night. So what does a witness to all this suffering do? He documents and he leaves. But he hopes, perhaps a naive hope, that his photos have the power to make a difference. He hopes that in witnessing, people will not say it is someone else's job and walk away. They will see these pictures and know that that man is still crouching in the corner of that church basement, that that woman is still chained to a bed in that crumbling hospital, that that child is still tethered to that stick in that dust-blown tent city, and they will not give up on the forgotten, the ignored, the neglected, the abused, the condemned.
You know, folks, mental health stigma in Africa must stop. It must stop. According to World Health Organization, WHO, this is what they say mental health actually is. You're meant to be able to cope with the normal stresses of life, which means, being able to manage your money, being able to manage your relationship issues, being able to manage work, the whole work-life balance, being able to manage just the little challenges of life. We're meant to be able to manage those challenges that come our way, those stresses that come our way. Remember, this is part of the description for what is mental health according to WHO. You're meant to be able to work productively. And when you look and see how mental illness actually stops you from working productively because you're not able to cope, then it becomes a very big life skill that we're actually missing out on. And you're also meant to be able to contribute to our community, make a contribution in whatever way you can, which means supporting each other, being able to be a part of community events, things that are going on in the community. So basically what World Health Organization is saying is we should be able to readjust to life even with the stresses that are happening, so that we are able to work productively, we're able to handle the normal stresses of life, and then we're able to make a contribution to our community. So it comes back to, if we are dismissing people who are suffering from mental illnesses, it actually means that we are going against what we are meant to be doing to protect their mental health, because what we are doing is we are abusing them. So it comes back to that. Yet they're in a very vulnerable position where they're not able to do the things that WHO have actually said make for good mental health. So let me just ask you again, what is your reaction to people who are suffering from mental illnesses? Do you point fingers, laugh at them, and do things like that one has lost it? Because that happens a lot and I see it. And then, like I've put up on our board, we've got to break the stigma of mental illnesses. What are you going to do about it? And I know I've said it before, but guess what? This could happen to you. It could happen to me. It could happen to your sister, to your brother, to your uncle, to your auntie, to your mom, to your dad. At the end of the day, this could happen to anyone. If we do not stop this whole 18th century outlook of mental illnesses on this continent of Africa, we are actually going to lose so many more people to depression. What are you going to do about it to break the stigma? When it comes to mental illnesses and the stigma that goes with it, we lack so much compassion. The stigmatization of mental illnesses has got to stop. Africa, Africans, it has got to stop. It's time to get into the 21st century and stop believing such archaic issues about mental health. How would you like to be treated? How would you like anyone in your family to be treated? So, what are you going to do about it to break the stigma of mental ill health? Let me challenge you on that one. Are you going to do anything about it? So, until next time, don't forget to share this information, because it's the only way we're actually going to break the stigmatization of mental illnesses. So please, don't forget to share this information and to subscribe to our channel. Feel free as well. In fact, I'm inviting you to go to our Shibero.com page, where you can see what else is going on for us. Yeah? And visit our Facebook page as well, because there's always information coming and going. So, till next time, you take care, God bless, and remember, break the stigma of mental ill health. God bless. Bye.